I'm Anya, and I am truly suffering. I am having a chronic pain flare up, and it is making me hate things. Things like books I've read, things like myself. I tried to put on makeup and make myself look nice for you, but make no mistake, these are the smoky eyes of suffering. With that said, I have read 11 books so far this month, and I would like to talk about them. So let's get started. Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Technically, I finished this book on the last day of August, but I'm counting it anyway because fuck it, I do what I want. This is a book about a family and the day that their house burns down when they throw a wild party. And it's about their history, it's a family story, it's a drama. It's not 100% my thing. I read this as part of a project I have ongoing where I am revisiting books I DNF'd. I previously DNF'd this book at page 100 because I was so bored. But previously this year, I read Atmosphere, and I was trying to figure out if I actually had matured in my taste, if I was a Taylor Jenkins Reid fan now. But I'm not sure that I am. I was able to finish the book, but I thought it was just okay. And I don't feel a deep urge to pick up more books by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Also, I just kicked the camera, and I'm sorry if you puked. Next, I read I Know a Place, Rest Stop and Other Dark Detours by Nat Cassidy. And I really liked this. The only other Nat Cassidy book I'd read previously was When the Wolf Comes Home, and I liked it. It wasn't an all-time favorite, but I did really like it. And I personally believe that the short story is the finest and most elegant way to write horror. It is the epitome of what horror should be. And this collection did not let me down. It's also not an all-time favorite, but it is very good. It contains the novella Rest Stop, which is about a man who stops at a rest stop and is confronted with a killer. And it is funny and also scary. And I love when a book manages to pull off those things without slipping over into full-on horror comedy. And it also, I think my favorite story in the collection was Laugh Lines because it was really mean. And I love when horror gets really mean. But it's a solid collection. It's smart, it's thoughtful, it's very Jewish, and that is a compliment. I will say, Stephen King writes the introduction to this book, and Nat Cassidy talks at the ending of the book when he's talking about the stories. He talks about how much of a fan he is of Stephen King. And you can really see King in the bones of these stories, in just the way that Cassidy structures his plots. And that doesn't make them rip-offs. They're not rip-offs. They're not just boring cover versions of Stephen King. But you can see that King is where Cassidy built his bones, the bones of the story structure. And I found that really interesting. Anyway, do recommend this collection. Give it a shot. Next, I read Agents of Dreamland by Caitlin R. Kiernan. And Kiernan is always an excellent writer. They are very skilled and very controlled in their writing, but this left me a little cold. This reads like a Lovecraftian episode of X-Files, and I was never an X-Files fan. Strange men in dark suits always left me a little cold, but if you do like X-Files, if you do like that kind of cloak and dagger feel to a world, and you like Lovecraft, this might be worth picking up. For me, I'm going to unhaul it, but it is well written. Next, I read Tradwife by Saratoga Schaefer, and I'm not going to lie, this was a disappointment. This book is compared to Rosemary's Baby for the digital age. That's what it says on it. This is nothing like Rosemary's Baby, which is actually saying something. This book feels like it's trying to capitalize on the tradwife trend. It doesn't really go into detail about tradwives and feminism, tradwives and gender, racism, disability, white supremacy, all the things that tradwives are really linked to. This is a book about a woman who is a minor trad wife influencer. She has about 40,000 followers, and the one thing that's going to make her life perfect is having a baby. And when she doesn't get pregnant on her own, she prays and a monster shows up and impregnates her. And it is impossible to say exactly what I disliked about this book without spoiling it. I did do a reading vlog for this one, which is somewhat less than great because I was going into a massive chronic pain flare at the time. But if this had not been specifically billed to me as a feminist book, I would not have been so disappointed. The middle is a slog. The beginning's fine. The last third of the book is pleasantly gory and unhinged. But ultimately, this book left me cold. Then I read Dead Weight by Hildur Knutsdottir. And I don't think this book was as good as her previous book, The Night Guest. If you read this, I recommend not reading the story summary or what the book is about because I think it spoils too much. It's very short. It's a novella. And I enjoyed this, but it also felt slight. It was a good way to pass the time, but I don't think it's going to stick with me. Next, I read Carry Me to My Grave by Christopher Golden. And Golden's books are pretty much, for me, always a good time. They are action horror, which is currently, in the current landscape of horror, there's not a ton of action horror being published. And this is an excellent example of the form. This follows a man whose mother is dying, and she wants him to bury her body in 2 days before sunrise in her hometown. And all his life, he's been told his mother was a witch. And spoilers, she was definitely a witch. And with her death, all the creatures that she has bound throughout her life are on their way after them, trying to stop this burial. This is fantastic. Train adventure. This is set, I can't remember exactly when it's set, but the hero is a Korean War veteran. And I thought it was twisty and turny. I thought it was a good family story. I just thought that it was a really fun time. And I do recommend it. Christopher Golden doesn't seem to get a lot of talk about him on BookTube, but I consider him a very solid, very fun writer. And I do recommend this book. Next, I read The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. And this is the best book that I have read all year. This is about a young Black boy, he's 12 years old, who is sent to a reformatory based on the real-life Dozier School for Boys, and it's essentially a prison for children. Children are abused, children are beaten, children are sent to work the fields, to do hard labor, and most importantly, children die there, just like they did at the real-life school. This 12-year-old boy is sent there for the crime of kicking a white boy who was sexually assaulting his sister, and it follows his time at the reformatory and the work of his sister on the outside trying to get him out. The reformatory is populated by ghosts, but those ghosts are the least frightening thing about the reformatory. This is fantastic. It has real-life historical ties. Due's uncle died at the real-life equivalent of this school. And this book is so painful and so sad and so beautiful, but most of all, it's also really gripping and really intense. It is a damn good story, which is the most important thing when you are reading fiction. It is informative. It is the best thing that I've read all year, truly. I have never read Due's long-form fiction before. I have only read her short stories, and they are excellent, but I am definitely going to pick up more of Due's work soon. This is a phenomenally written book, and I highly recommend it. Then I read We Hex the Moon by an author whose name I have already forgotten. I apologize. This is out of my usual genre. This is more weird lit, but it was billed as The Craft meets Bunny, and I love both of those things. And I did enjoy this book. I found it really charming. This is about a group of teenage girls who would decide to place a hex on the moon at a sleepover. And the next day, the moon is in their bedroom saying she's not going back to the sky. They need to find a human sacrifice to take her place. And it is funny, it is charming, it is a sweet story about girlhood and female friendship, and it's a little bit scary and strange. Not in my usual genre, but it was really a delight. I'm happy I read it. And if it sounds at all interesting to you, even if, like me, you tend to mostly stick with horror, I still recommend this book. It's a fun time. Next, I read Nat Cassidy's Mary, which I actually started 2 months ago and forgot I was reading. I didn't like this as much as I thought I would, but it may have had something to do with the mood I was in at the time I was reading it. This follows Mary, who is a menopausal woman who is being dismissed by her doctors, and her strange symptoms are being ignored, one of which is the fact that every time she looks at herself in a mirror, or a woman about her age, she sees their faces start to dissolve into rot. But the doctors are just like, ho, 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 that's just what happens when you are an old woman. Tee-hee. And obviously it's not. Also, Mary was born at the exact same time that a serial killer died. And she had a very strange childhood. I'm not going to say much else about the plot of the book. It does involve cults, if you like cult horror. It was very fun, but I think I'm going to need to reread it later and hopefully appreciate it more. I think I just wasn't in the right mood for this book. It is very good, but it didn't hit the way that I wanted it to. So I'm gonna come back to it at a later time. Then I read The Bullet Swallower by Elizabeth Gonzalez James. And this is also out of my usual type of fiction. This is literary magical realism. And it's the type of book that people say things like, oh, it's lush and lyrical. And it is both of those things, but it's also a damn good story. This is about two men, one of whom is an outlaw in the West, in the Old West, and one of whom is an actor in Mexico in the 1960s, and the curse that connects their family through the generations. And this book is so well written. I mean, this is a book where you feel in your spine every time the horse's hoof hits the hard desert sand. This was really interesting. I don't usually go for literary fiction, but this one is gripping and absorbing and really sad. I will admit that the third POV in the book didn't really work for me, and I didn't really find it interesting, but I did find the story of the two main male characters extremely interesting. And this is also partially based on the life of the author's great-grandfather, I believe. It's a revenge story. It's a Western. It's a love story. It's a meditation on masculinity and revenge, and it is truly beautiful. The last book that I have read so far this month is Molka by Monica Kim. And this book is more what I was hoping Trad Wife would be. It follows so Molka is a way of referring to the problem of spy cameras in toilets, on subways, in private places, and the men who capture images of women to exploit and harass them. And this is a very angry book, deservedly angry book. And it follows a young woman who has always tried to do everything right, and what happens to her. And In some ways, this is a book about no matter how good you are, men will always punish you. It doesn't matter how good you are. There are some men who are always going to hurt you. And it is dark. It is gruesome. It is sad. I will say that the writing in some spots is a little bit clunky, and there are a couple of subplots that I wish had been more fleshed out, but the book as a whole is very good. I do recommend it. And I loved it. I read this from the library, and I may pick up a physical copy for my collection. I need to read Kim's first book, The Eyes Are the Best Part. Maybe I'll pick that up later this month. But really good and saying something, which was my main problem with Tradwife, which is that ultimately that book is saying nothing. Absolutely nothing. So that's it. That's what I've read so far this month. Please let me know in the comments what you've read so far this month and what I should pick up next. I'm currently on a bit of a nonfiction kick, but I hope to get some of my horror holds come in at the, some of my horror holds come in at the library, and I get back on my spooky train. And I have been, I don't remember what I was going to say. The pain has bogged my brain, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you watched the video. Thanks for sticking around, and I will see you again.